As a part of our new Cornell Cooperative Extension Marine Program's digital education initiative, we have started a new video and audio podcast series called Cornell Marine's Digital Learning Podcast. This is our 9th show, one more than 10. So far, we've hit over 1,500 views. So that's awesome. And we thank you guys so much. We're very excited about it. Now, in this week's show, we're going to discuss Long Island's coastal habitats and how important it is to protect them. Morning, Mr. C. How's it going, man? What are you doing? Playing with sand this morning?
Yeah, well, Rory, I was just thinking about, how Long Island's really made mostly of sand. And maybe instead of calling it Long Island, we should call it Long Sandy Island.
Well, I think that might be a good idea. When I was a kid too, I love the beach. And so when you go to the beach, you get in the car, you go home, and then you don't clean the car out, Yep. So it seems like when you open up the door, like the sand just kind of rolls right out of the car.
1 ton of sand at Rory's house. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a kid, I was in high school, actually. We used to do a lot of camping on this lake, and it had more of kind of a rocky, pebbly shoreline. We didn't have a lot of sand.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do remember we used to do a lot of water skiing, and my brother, he used to slalom ski, with one ski. So one day he decided to be a real, hot dog. So the boat whips you around the shore. He comes in on one ski. He's just got to step out onto the shore, real cool, like.
Right.
I think I was working that day when this happened. So when I got out of work, I went back to the campsite. Here he's sitting in a lounge chair with all these red dots and streaks all over his body. I think it's what's called mercurochrome that my mother put on his scrapes and cuts.
I used a lot of mercurochrome when I was a kid. Let me tell you, I remember that stuff.
Yeah, he was not a happy camper.
No way. No way.
Well, we should get back to the subject at hand.
All right. We usually diverge, don't we?
We do. So we actually really have some beautiful beaches here on Long Island.
Absolutely.
Besides our beaches, obviously we have salt marshes, tidal creeks, and of course, the rocky shore, on the Long Island Sound.
Oh yeah. I love the beaches here. As a photographer, you can't beat it. I mean, I've been monthly going out to catch the moonrise, and I usually pick a nice beach, to go on to. Cooper's Beach over in Southampton is rated like in the top 10 of all the beaches in the world. So we live in a beautiful place.
Obviously the beaches we have here is actually made, obviously it was made from rocks. When rocks get eroded by the wave action, it makes sand. So generally our sand here is, light brown, kind of an off-white. That's due to the large percentage of quartz rocks that we have here, that were left by the glaciers, 12,000 years ago. So as you know, Rory, Mother Nature can move sand very easily with wind and water. Remember what Superstorm Sandy did, to our coastline by moving sand?
Oh yeah. Now, isn't it true that every year our beaches change due to like winter storms and waves and all that, and especially like the beaches offshore, and the gentle summer waves like bring all that sand back.
Yeah, it's interesting. You ever go to a beach in the winter and you look, where did the beach go? Why is it so steep? Those heavy waves in the winter push that sand to like a sandbar, offshore, and it just sits there. But then in the gentle waves, push that sand, right back on the beach for the summer.
So during big storms, that's why beach dunes are so important to protect the beach. One way to help stabilize our sandy shorelines is with plants, like on a dune. I have a marine moment, Mark, that explains that.
Great.
Healthy coastal plants are good for the environment. Hi, I'm Rory MacNish, and this is a Marine Minute Monday. Healthy plant communities such as dunes and salt marshes help to create a protective line of resiliency in the face of damaging storms. Salt marsh plants also help to restore nutrients from the surface and groundwaters as they pass through their roots. Cornell Cooperative Extension Habitat Restoration Program has initiated several projects to help restore coastal plant habitats. One such project is on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation, which 3,000 feet of shoreline that had been degraded by Superstorm Sandy has been replaced with sand from a dredging project from the Department of Public Works. Shinnecock Nation and CCE staff propagate native plants and seeds from the area for replanting on the beach and dunes. These plants grow and thus create a natural buffer and a protective line of resiliency. This has been a Marine Minute Monday, produced by Cornell Cooperative Extension Marine Program.
Yeah, that was a major project after that storm, obviously from Superstorm Sandy, Rory.
Yeah, that was fun to film that one because I got to use my drone, and it was just getting some great footage. I was pretty happy with. So another project that I was involved with was at Widow's Hole in Greenport, and guess what?
I bet you have another video.
I do. In 2012, the ExxonMobil Corporation gave the Peconic Land Trust 2.4 acres of land known as Widow's Hole in Greenport, Long Island. A conservation easement was also gifted to South Old Town and the village of Greenport at the same time to protect this property in perpetuity.
Well, years ago, this was actually a station that was used by Exxon to unload petroleum products. ExxonMobil started this program where they were gifting properties that they didn't have a use for any longer, and Peconic Land Trust actually acquired this. We were the first in the entire country as part of this program. But over the years, it faced a lot of erosion and invasive species issues on the upland, but on the shoreline, lots of erosion, just severe erosion, and that's what we're looking to address with this project.
Peconic Land Trust approached Cornell to help them with creating a management plan for the property originally. And then over several years, so this started back, I believe, in 2015, we went from a management plan to an actual shoreline restoration to try to stem the erosion that was occurring along the shoreline here. It kind of evolved into how can we protect the property from further erosion, at the same time enhancing the habitat value of the site. So Chris Pickerel and myself worked on a plan to create a living shoreline design for this property that hopefully will be able to help the property maintain the beach, increase the habitat value for animals, and also maintain the aesthetics, the natural aesthetics of the property.
Cornell was significant in developing this living shoreline plan. And then once we had this plan in hand, Peconic Estuary Program did agree to fund this with $150,000, and then we went straight to the DEC, and they were very excited about it, and they basically looked at it as a great project and a scientific experiment. So we were able to do a lot of unique things on this project.
We had heard that it was an opportunity to help out a really important restoration project with Peconic Land Trust to restore this shoreline to more natural stage. So we decided to help Peconic Land Trust and Cornell out and fund this project and work with them to restore this shoreline and plant the grasses that we're planting here today, and also plant some spartina along the coastal area to protect the shoreline naturally instead of building a hardened structure here that might impact areas nearby and cause more erosion.
We got the contractor all lined up and set with us, and they started bringing sand in, and we quickly graded the beach. And then we just finished yesterday with the contouring and the final look in preparation for today's planting. So right now we're at the end of April. The end of April is the window closes for planting beach grass. So we'll finish off today or possibly even Monday with a little more planting. And then come June, when the cordgrass, the marsh grass, is all greened out that we have growing back at the lab, we'll bring that out here, set up other volunteer days, and we'll start planting from the water's edge, mean sea level. We'll tie it in with the existing marsh grass behind us that's here, and we'll plant towards the high tide line. And that between the cobble rock that we have along the shoreline edge and the spartina, the cordgrass, once it gets established, In case of storms, the roots will hold the sand and the stems will knock down some of the wave energy. And then if it surpasses that, we get a storm surge, then the beach grass roots will hopefully help hold this beachfront and this dune front. This living shoreline philosophy is really starting to take off in New York, and it's been used up and down the East Coast, and it's really gained a lot of acceptance. So it's low cost, very community friendly, and using volunteers, and it is proven to be very successful.
Well, the Upland area will be replanted. We've taken all the invasives out of it. There'll be more of that to be done. We're putting up a nice friendly fence, a 4-foot fence with a pretty gate that will welcome the community. They can also walk along the shoreline, but it's more of a passive recreation preserve. It is not a park, but it's a preserve, and we hope that the community will really enjoy it.
My husband Mark, who owns a fishing vessel Illusion, was coming home to Greenport. We would sit here and watch him actually sail into port. So we have a special kinship to this particular piece of property. It's very much cleaned up from what it was, and it is a big part of the village of Greenport to see it not become some waterfront enterprise, but open land for us all.
So this project is one of the first living shoreline projects in the estuary, and we are proud to be a part of this. We're hoping this project will give others, homeowners, municipalities, a really great example of what you can do to naturally protect your shoreline. It's also going to be very public, open access to the public, so everybody can come down here and enjoy the beauty and the function of this living shoreline.
Yeah, Rory, that was a great video. It was really special. It was really nice to see that project.
Cool. So I'm going to bring on a gentleman that had a lot to do with that project, Steve Schott. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Hey, Rory, how are you?
Hey, good morning,
well.
Steve.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
So, Steve, what is your official title for Cornell Marine Program?
My official title for Cornell Marine Program is Marine Botany / Habitat Restoration Specialist.
All right. And how can I credit you with all that information? How can we make that shorter?
I don't know. You want to just do the Habitat Restoration Specialist?
That's fine. I'll put that up right now. There you are.
All right. There you go.
All right.
All right.
So Steve, we just watched the video on the Widow's Hole project. How was that project for you?
It was a good project. It was one of the first in the Peconic estuary, so we learned a lot of things, a lot of techniques, and we're still learning from the project as well. It was one of the first projects that I was living shoreline projects that I was able to design from start to finish, and it was a long process.
Yeah. So, Steve, why did you pick that site there?
So Cornell has had a working relationship with Peconic Land Trust. Peconic Land Trust was given the conservatorship of the property at Widow's Hole. It used to be a ExxonMobil oil depot that was remediated, and was then the conservation rights were given to Peconic Land Trust, with the understanding that it would be a passive use preserve. Now, between it being a commercial property and then subsequently we've had a lot of storms, Superstorm Sandy being one of them, there's been a lot of damage and alteration to the shorelines there. And Land Trust approached Cornell Cooperative to see what we can work together to try to return that shoreline to a more natural state. So that started back. The whole process started back in 2015.
Wow.
Did you glean a lot of information from the Shinnecock Project? Because you guys did a huge project over at the Indian Reservation, right? The Indian Nation.
Yeah, this project was the Widow's Hole project was much more manageable. The Shinnecock Project was a little over 3,000 linear feet of shoreline that we restored with dune plantings, oyster reefs, offshore eelgrass plantings, and marsh plantings. So, and a lot more sand had to be moved as well. So yeah, it was, when you go from a large project like that to a smaller one, it definitely makes it easier to manage and really look at the details. So
both of them kind of were example of like a living shoreline. Dig into that a little bit for me, because you know, both, you know, that we mentioned that in the video itself of Widow's Hole. Tell me a little bit more about like a living shoreline, and why is that important?
So Living Shorelines, a concept that's new in New York. The guidance has only been released for a couple of years now by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. However, it's been used up and down the East Coast and in numerous states. And it's an alternative way of protecting shorelines. Instead of putting up hard structures like bulkheads or rock revetments, we're going back to using natural materials, some rock, but mixing in other aspects like native vegetation or offshore oyster reefs and sills, which help mitigate wave damage, erosion, and really shore up the shoreline in a natural way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So with this project that you put in, Steve, what types of plants did you actually use for this project?
So the project worked in two phases. The first phase was bringing in more sand. We had to regrade the beach, and there was a lot of erosion along the upland edge. So we actually, and I believe you saw it in the video, we brought in rock and brought in a lot of sand, about 2,000 yards of sand. We created a coastal dune. On that coastal dune, we planted American beach grass. It's the same grass you go down to the South Shore along Dune Road that you see growing on the dunes there. It's a very important grass along coastal areas, very deep-rooted, very hardy plant, and helps to hold the dunes in place from both storm damage and from wind. So that's our first defense for the upland dry land portion of the preserve, was to really try to fortify or at least make the edge of the upland a little more resilient to storm damage. Then we moved down the shoreline and into the intertidal zone. So we're working from high tide to about mid tide, and we planted Spartina alterniflora, or salt marsh cordgrass. Now, this is the common grass that we see in our salt marshes and in our creeks and quiet bays. A lot of the bay used to be fringed with these reefs, these marshes. Now, the grass is really good because it has the ability, as waves come rolling in, it'll knock down the energy of those waves. So National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration has done a lot of work with this. They say a 15-foot band of salt marsh can actually dissipate 50% of wave forces that interact with it. Wow. So think about some of these storm waves that come in, and you're decreasing the force by 50%. That's 50% less damage it's likely to do to the shoreline above there. So so those are the two main aspects that we included in this project, was the vegetated dune to protect the upland, and then to protect the lower shoreline and prevent erosion, the salt marsh grass.
The property itself that the Peconic Land Trust owns down there, what are the plans for the community there?
So I mentioned earlier, one of the conditions from ExxonMobil when they signed it, the conservation rights over to the land trust, was that it had to be used for passive recreation. So they're not looking for active use of the upland portion of the property. Now, the beach is very well used. So it's on kind of a corner type of a lot. You have Clark Street ends on the north side, and 4th Street. So a lot of people actually in their daily walks will walk down the end of either Clark Street or 4th Street and walk the beach around to the other street and continue. During the summertime, we have a lot of people that will launch kayaks, sailboats off that beach. So the beach is more of a public use. The upland portion is more passive. So there's a 4-foot high fence around the property just to delineate it. and really it's the beachfront that gets the most use of the property.
Okay.
So did you, as far as for upland areas, did you plant, Steve, any beach plum or bayberry in this project?
We did install some bayberry on the backside, the upland backside of the dune. We also did some coastal grasses, switchgrass, little blue stem, and those will continue to be planted and filled in over time. The work at the site is not by any means over.
Right.
We have plans for phase 2, and Land Trust is committed to trying again to make the site more natural after it had been used for such a long period of time as a commercial property.
Hey, Steve, what was the most challenging part of the project? I mean, you said it wasn't as big as the Indian Nation's 3,000 feet beach that you put in, but I'm sure there was still some challenges that you had there.
Well, yeah, we actually lucked out with working with the Shinnecock Indian Nation. They are a sovereign nation, so the permitting process was basically non-existent. We were able to do a lot of things without having to go through the bureaucracy that you normally do with doing restorations. Being that our project was one of the first living shorelines to be done in New York under the new guidance, the process was a little more onerous than you would think for a restoration where you're trying to restore a property back to a more natural state versus putting up a bulkhead or a dock.
Right.
So that usually is the most difficult. Is just getting the permission from all regulatory agencies. It's all the work up to a project that is usually the planning, the permitting, and then once you get to it, if you did all the hard work ahead of time, then it just flows pretty quickly.
Right.
Very
sounds
cool.
like painting a room. Prepping it and fixing the holes in the sheetrock and priming it is the hard part.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Steve, any other kind of projects like that coming down the road?
Well, we just completed a demonstration project in cooperation with the town of Southold and the Peconic Estuary Partnership. I have to remember their new name. And that's located at our facility at Cedar Beach in Southold. What we did was set up some demonstration areas along a dredged canal and restored that using different materials in a living shoreline presentation. So now what the trustees were looking for was more people are asking for permits to do these type of projects at their own properties within Southold town. The trustees were looking to be able to send them someplace to see what kind of options, how it would be, because for a lot of people, looking at things on paper and looking at a picture is a little different than actually seeing in real life how it could look. So we set up 5 demonstration plots using different techniques at the Marine Center. And we are going to be adding signage this probably within the next month or two that will allow people to just be directed by the trustees to come down. The signage will totally walk them through without someone having to be there. They can look at the different demonstration plots and kind of help formulate their own plan for their personal projects on their own properties.
So that's when the Marine Center is all back and running and functional again, right? We'll probably have some information on our website that we can let people know that that's happening. Or how do you intend to get the word out that they can do that?
I believe that the trustees, being that they're part of this, and this was the main reason for the funding and going forward with the project, was so that they could actually refer people that are coming in with permit applications. Great. Word of mouth will be coming from the town for anybody who's seeking permits. We're also going to be putting a copy of the signage up on our websites.
Right.
So the sign that will be out at the Cedar Beach parking lot to direct people of what the project is about will also be available online, so people can actually access it digitally. And if they want to come out and see it in person, they're more than welcome.
Great, Steve. So if I'm just taking a little walk on a beach, or I go to a place and there's dunes there, what are some things that you can tell people, to do to help protect our coastline, even if they're just, visiting the shore?
Well, the first thing is, be careful when you're walking through vegetated areas. Dune plants are pretty resilient, but continued traffic over them will kill the plants.
Right.
And if you kill the plants, they're no longer there holding the sand. The first storm that comes along, any of those unvegetated areas are going to be the first ones to get washed out.
Yeah. So stay off the dunes, right?
Basically, stay off the dunes. They're a natural barrier between us and the energy of a storm. So, and we're better off if they stay intact. Right. We didn't create this. We didn't come up with this concept. This is Mother Nature figured this out. This is a natural process. Naturally healthy shorelines. This is how they look. This is how they function.
Right.
All we're doing is trying to restore that function back to areas where we've gotten a little overzealous in our activities and have basically thrown off the balance. One last thing too, I'd just like to thank the partners that we work with. So Peconic Land Trust on this project, and going forward, hopefully on a phase 2 to continue to improve Widow's Hole, but also the Peconic Estuary Partnership. They provided the funding for this project, part of the funding for our demonstration project at the lab, and have been very good partners with us working in the Peconic Estuary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Steve, thanks again for your time. Rory mentioned you're a man of many talents. I also know you're a man of many cats.
Yes, I've got 8 of them.
8. Woohoo!
We'll
do a cat show, Rory.
8 cats is enough in your case, right?
Right.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
All right. Very cool. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, that's our podcast for today. Next week, it's all about lobsters. We'll talk about the die-off in the mid-1990s and our programs to recover the lobster pots that were left in the Sound as a result of that die-off. This week, I'd like to mention about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County as a whole. We are so much bigger than just the Marine program. Go to ccesuffolk.org and see everything the extension in Suffolk County offers, from the agriculture program to family health and wellness. You'll find information on gardening, community nutrition, and we run the Suffolk County Farm along with all 4-H programs. So check us out and have a great week.